Hey, this is Zulem Urbina, and tune into the relay for the latest news in boxing all around the world. Thank you for supporting myself and other female boxers. We truly appreciate it.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. A bit of a plot twist. A rumor that's been circulating for a little while turned out to be true. Mikaela Mayer is moving up in weight to face Christina Linardatou, a source confirmed to ESPN.
But isn't Christina supposed to be fighting Chantel Cameron for Undisputed?
A month ago, the WBO ordered Chantel Cameron, newly crowned Undisputed Super Lightweight Champion, to take on Christina.
If she moves down to 135 pounds to take on Mikaela, it will be for no belt at all, as Mikaela Mayer holds no belts in the lightweight division. Katie Taylor is that division's Undisputed Champion.
A date and location for the fight have not been determined. This will be Mayer's first fight since a split decision loss to Alicia Baumgartner in October that unified the IBF, WBC, and WBO titles. The 32-year-old Mayer unsuccessfully campaigned for a rematch against Baumgartner or a fight against then WBA champion Hyun-Mi Choi at junior lightweight. Baumgartner also attempted to fight Choi, who was injured and is now the WBA's champion in recess, before setting up an undisputed junior lightweight title fight against Ellen Mekhaled on February 4th in New York. Without those two fights available, Mayer decided to move up to lightweight, something the fighter had been considering for about a year.
Linardatou has fought just once since 2020. A win in July over Alexandra Vujovic, the former WBO junior welterweight title holder.
If Christina ends up boxing Mikaela Mayer for no belt at all at lightweight instead of facing Chantel at super lightweight, it has to be because the money for the Mayer fight was better than the money for the Cameron fight, even though the Cameron fight is an undisputed title fight.
It would have to be, otherwise why would she do it?
Outside of a hefty purse, she stands to gain nothing sharing the ring with Mikaela Mayer. But if the people at Top Rank offered her more money than the people at Matchroom offered her to face their fighter, well then, that would make more sense.
I want to say that I'm not against either fight. I like Cameron versus Linardatou just as much as I like Mayer versus Linardatou.
Linardatou, who has only fought once since 2020, a win in July over Alexandra Vujovic, the former WBO junior welterweight title holder. Linardatou lost to Katie Taylor in 2019 and then regained the belt in 2020 with a win over Priska Vikot. Her only losses have come against Katie Taylor and Delphine Persoon in a 2016 fight for the WBC lightweight title. Her best win came in 2018 when she defeated Alicia Baumgartner by split decision. That was the only loss of Baumgartner's career. In November, the WBO named Linardatou as the mandatory challenger to Chantel Cameron following Cameron's undisputed junior welterweight title fight win over Jessica McCaskill.
The money for a Mayer fight must be better than the money for the Cameron fight. That's gotta be it.
If that is the direction that young Christina Linardatou ends up going, Christina, who sports a professional record of 14 wins, 2 losses with no draws, 6 knockouts, having never been knocked out.
It's a very interesting fight.
And it's important to note that while Mikaela Mayer has spent a sizable portion of her career campaigning as a super featherweight, when she debuted her first couple of fights, they were actually at lightweight. They were actually at 135 pounds. She eventually moved down in weight, and here she is moving back up.
She's moving up to lightweight, and Christina is moving down. Christina,
for the last 4 years or so, Christina Linardatou has been campaigning as a super lightweight. In the last 3 or 4 years, she's fought exclusively at 140 pounds. This will be the first time in a long time she campaigns anywhere lower than 140.
she's only had one fight, just one fight in the last 3 years or so.
Close to 3 years. She fought once in 2020 against Priska Vikot before the pandemic shut everything down. She sat out all of 2021, and she saw action just once last year in July.
Stylistically, it's a very interesting fight. I think punch for punch, Christina Linardatou is a heavier-handed puncher than Mikaela Mayer is.
Christina Linardatou's best punches are her bent arm punches and her looping shots. Her looping right or a compact left hook mid-range to inside. She's more of a close quarters fighter than Mikaela Mayer is. Not saying that Mikaela Mayer can't work on the inside. She can. We saw that in the Maiva Hamadouche fight, though at her best punches are her straight punches.
She is adaptable, but she is more of an outside fighter than an inside fighter.
Mikaela is. Mid-range to inside, Christina Linardatou would have the advantage. The question is, having been sparsely active the last couple of years, is Christina sharp enough?
Is she sharp enough for this fight?
What Christina Linardatou has working for her, going into this thing, is that she is somewhat shorter than Mikaela Mayer. She's not as long and limber as Mikaela is. She's a shorter, stumpier fighter with a lower center of gravity that moves side to side like a metronome whilst closing the gap.
She can slip, roll, and ride, bob and weave under straight punches from the outside coming in, looking to get under those shots and come over the top with big shots. Big hooks, looping right.
Stylistically, that's what's working for her. What's working against her is the last couple of years, she hasn't been as active as Mikaela, so she may not be as sharp as Mikaela.
Might not.
Mikaela will have a bit of a height advantage, reach advantage.
Christina Linardatou would serve as a common opponent between Mikaela Mayer and her old buddy, Alicia Baumgartner. And I think that what Mikaela's going for is sending Alicia a message.
She wants to beat the woman that beat Alicia.
She wants to make a statement.
I don't think Alicia's going to be too concerned about the outcome of this fight either way, but that might be what Mikaela's shooting for.
Why else would Top Rank have reached out to her?
If not for the ties that bind. I do like this fight.
We'll see if they can get it over the line.
Men's lightweight and super lightweight news. Up-and-comer Ryan Garcia stated, in all reality, most boxers and people who have a real eye for boxing can see what's a tune-up and what's not. Truth can only be seen at times by people that only care about that. Doesn't matter about belts or accolades. That's the truth. Belts are watered down means nothing.
You're just saying that because you don't have a belt.
Oh, I see. Fighting for belts means nothing, but fighting Emmanuel to go, that's supposed to mean something?
Is that how it works?
What did fighting Emmanuel to go mean? What did fighting Javier Fortuna, what did that mean?
Javier Fortuna, who lost to Jojo Diaz, who lost to Devin Haney.
I know what Ryan Garcia's doing, and so do you.
Still making up excuses not to fight Devin Haney. He's shading the fact that Devin Haney is in the same age group as he is, but Devin Haney is already a far more accomplished fighter with a better resume at least than Ryan's. He fought a former champion in Jorge Linares, a former champion in Jojo Diaz,
a unified unbeaten champion in George Kambosos, and look at what he's about to do. He's about to fight Vasyl Lomachenko.
This ain't the first time that this self-important little princess has tried to diminish the value of becoming a champion, let alone an undisputed champion, on the premise that the belts don't matter, but the fighters you're fighting, they do?
They matter?
Beating Emmanuel to go is supposed to be better than beating Jojo Diaz and Jorge Linares?
Beating Javier Fortuna, who was beaten by Jojo Diaz. Beating Javier Fortuna is supposed to be better than both beating Jojo Diaz and George Kambosos?
What are you, an idiot?
By eye test. Wouldn't you consider Tank the most talented and dangerous fight? It's common sense my victory over Tank would be better than if I want to fight with Regis Prograis for all the quote-unquote belts. It's pretty clear if you look for it.
Oh, I see. We're supposed to rely on the presupposition that both you and Tank are more talented than Regis, when I wouldn't pick either of yous to beat Regis.
If we're going off of eye tests and Regis were your next fight, or Regis were Gervonta Davis's next fight, I wouldn't pick either of yous to beat that guy.
Why?
You got sat on your ass by a light punching Luke Campbell, a guy who's not known for power, and that was at 135 pounds. What would Regis do to you at 140? Regis Prograis, who's known for being one of the more devastating punchers at that weight.
And Gervonta needed 12 rounds to put away a one-legged Yuriorkis Gamboa. 12 rounds to put away one of the most chinny guys in that entire weight class.
He needed 12 rounds to put away a guy who was fighting on just one good leg. He needed 12 rounds for that guy, and he couldn't put away Isaac Cruz.
But I'm supposed to believe that you two are more talented than Regis? I wouldn't pick either of yous to beat Regis if he were your next fight.
I don't know. Maybe when he gets a bit older and slows down a bit more, decays a bit more, but here today, here and now, I wouldn't pick either of yous to beat him based on an eye test.
Not just an eye test, but who he's actually fought and who you haven't fought.
Because his quality of competition is, in fact, better than yours, and that's why you're expecting the boxing community at large to make all these presuppositions.
On the premise that you're so fucking talented, if you were that talented, your resume would look like his.
You could have fought Devin Haney. There was a time when both you and Devin Haney were fighting on the same platform, and he wanted to fight you, but you didn't want to fight him. You said you weren't interested. but you were interested in Emmanuel to go. You were interested in Javier Fortuna.
You're full of shit.
You're full of it. You were interested in Luke Campbell and fighting him in a WBC final eliminator, but you weren't interested in Devin Haney for the full title.
You're full of shit.
Well, I'll explain. Not everything is black and white. At times, depending on the fight and how great the fighters are, the belts do mean something, but for the most part, the belts don't matter. It's who you beat that matters.
And who did you beat?
Who did you beat at 135 pounds? Who did you beat at 140?
Ask that same question about Gervonta Davis. Who did he beat at 135 pounds? Yuriorkis Gamboa,
Isaac Cruz, and Rolly Romero.
These are not the upper echelon lightweights. They never were.
Ryan, you can't make the case that it's all about who you beat when you haven't beat anyone.
You haven't beat anyone at 135 pounds, and you haven't beat anyone at 140.
The very argument that Ryan Garcia is making is a redundancy, because even if that were true, it still wouldn't apply to him.
This is a ends justify the means kind of deal. In Ryan's mind, so long as he can get Gervonta Davis in the ring and beat him, that will, in effect, make him the king of the hill.
Top of the mountain. That's what he thinks.
On the premise that the fight between them actually happens later on this year. But let's say that fight doesn't happen. Let's say something else happens and that fight don't materialize. What then?
We're just supposed to postulate that you're more talented than everyone else whilst not fighting the fighters that everyone else is fighting?
Is that it?
The eye test has to be one of the more abused concepts in the sport of boxing. One of the more abused and misappropriated concepts.
Because at its base, it's theoretical.
It's not based in fact. It's based on assumption. It's a theory.
It's not a substitute for actual results. These presuppositions are not a substitute for actual fights that you have to actually win.
They don't give out fight purses for postulations, you know. You have to actually go in there and actually fight.
This abstract idea that you're more talented than someone else based on an eye test without you actually going in there and proving it, it's not a substitute for an actual fight.
You don't want a belt. You don't want to fight purse or get inducted into the Boxing Hall of Fame based on presuppositions, postulations, and theories.
You don't.
That ain't the name of the game. Try as he might to redefine it.
This is the hurt business, not the eye test business, not the hypothesis business. It's the hurt business.
You're gonna get yourself hurt. You don't keep Regis Progray's name out of your mouth.
You and that other kid are too JV for a fighter like Regis Prograis. That's why you've got to come up with excuses not to fight him, because you're a little boy and he's a grown man.
And let's say you actually do fight Gervonta Davis, for argument's sake. Let's hypothesize that you actually fight him and you actually beat him. What are you gonna do after that? Retire?
That's it. The crowning achievement of all your efforts in all your years in this sport has been one fight, just one fight, with Gervonta Davis?
Gervonta, who's beaten no one of note at 135 pounds. Or 140.
The nerve of this guy saying it's not about belts, it's about who you beat. You don't have any belts and you haven't beaten anyone.
Millennial melodrama from the mental health advocate Ryan Garcia, who thinks he's supposed to get credit for fights he hasn't even won.
It's funny that Ryan says this, because the top earning guys, the top earning athletes in this sport,
The present day athletes are the athletes of old. They all fought for alphabet titles. That's how it's done.
the face of boxing in this country fights for belts. You gonna tell me that he don't know what he's doing?
He draws more than you do while he's fighting for belts that you claim don't matter.
If not for the belt that Caleb Plant was in possession of, he never would have even got that shot at Canelo Alvarez, because that's what that was all about.
Whilst you try to convince the world that belts don't matter based on what is your social media following.
You know, you don't got a big following because of some big fight that you won or somebody that you beat. You got a big following because you're on social media a lot.
Because you, like a lot of these kids, take selfies and post them on Instagram and do TikTok dances and TikTok videos.
Don't confuse that social media stuff with having actual substance in this sport, because it's not the same thing.
Fucking naive, this guy. And finally, in men's welterweight news, unified champion Errol Spence Jr. says, I don't believe in tune-ups. Fans want to see me fight the best.
Then why are you fighting Keith Thurman?
There's a movement in some circles, small ones, to be willfully obtuse when the subject of Keith Thurman is broached. Like this isn't one of the most inactive welterweights in the entire division.
Don't expect to see Errol Spence Jr. mix it up with a stiff inside the ring anytime soon.
That's how the article reads, but you tell me what Keith Thurman's supposed to be. The unified welterweight champion from DeSoto, Texas, recently offered an encouraging personal manifesto of sorts as it relates to his fighting philosophy.
Fighting philosophy, the man barely fights.
Yeah, he's another one. And apparently it does not involve tomato cans, ham and eggers, walkovers, and stumble bums. I don't believe in tune-ups, Spence told ES News. Nah, I'm saying, they're not with my pedigree. Fighting someone I know I'm supposed to beat, and I know it's a showcase fight. I'm still gonna train hard, but I'm not gonna train as hard if I'm fighting a top dude with a name, you know what I'm saying?
It's only through sheer chicanery that Keith Thurman became the WBC's mandatory challenger. This is a man who hadn't fought in 2 years. He goes in there with a 140-pounder at 147, decisions him at 147 after he got knocked out at 140, and for that, he's given a shot at 3 belts.
And I feel like the fans deserve it too. They don't want to see me fight a bum dude or a showcase fight. They want to see me fight the best of the business.
That's not Keith Thurman. He lost to a 40-year-old Pacquiao over 2 years ago. 2 years later.
Well over 2 years later, close to 3. All he's done is decision. A 140-pounder who is coming off a knockout loss.
That's it. Keith Thurman is a tune-up fight.
Errol Spence Jr. hinted that his ring return may go down in April. On that kind of schedule, why not fight Terrence Crawford?
If you fight Keith in April, it will have been over a year's time since Keith Thurman's last fight. And Keith Thurman isn't a champion. Terrence Crawford is.
It's the name association thing, to where we're supposed to think of today's Keith Thurman as the Keith Thurman of old, the Keith Thurman from 2016. They do this all the time with Danny Garcia.
Danny ain't got no solid wins at 147 pounds. The whole time he was there, he didn't beat anyone of note. In fact, the only noteworthy wins he's ever had were at 140 pounds, close to 10 years ago.
Danny Garcia was a tune-up fight, and so is Keith Thurman.
The only intrigue associated with Garcia versus Spence was how Spence would look as a result of the car accident.
Not as a result of sharing the ring with Danny Garcia, who had already lost to Keith Thurman and Sean Porter.
He lost to the only 2 solid welterweights he had ever fought in a build-up of the Spence fight, and he lost the Spence fight, too.
With Thurman, you're talking about a sparsely active, semi-retired guy.
He's fought once in 3 years?
Mario Barrios, who got knocked out at 140. At 147, what does beating him mean? And what does it mean when that's the only fight you've had in approximately 3 years? You're one of the best? Based on what?
Things you did 6 years ago?
These mental gymnastics and abstract ideas don't fool anyone. Keith Thurman no longer represents one of the best and brightest fighters at this weight, and short of a massive upset.
Nothing he's done in the subsequent years that followed him losing his belt to Manny Pacquiao, nothing he's done
In the last few years signifies that he's still one of the best guys out there, because he's barely out there.
You need somebody to explain that to you?
To be considered the best, you have to compete. You have to fight. Not sit on the shelf for 2 and 3 years.
Jesus Christ!